Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to discuss the final four chapters of the Judging Eye, chapters 13 through 16. It's been a book. It's been a week. So we're here to finish off the Judging Eye, and I'm here with Katerina and Daniel. Katerina, will you give us an introduction and tell us why you're reading this book again?
Um, I mean, did I have any other alternatives?
I don't know.
Hi, I'm Katerina. Um, I don't know. I'm ready. Well, I mean, it would be really awkward if I just stopped and waited for two books for you guys to catch up with me. But it does feel strange to read the same book twice within a span of a couple months.
Hmm.
Um, but I still enjoyed it. It's still one of my favorites. Store Wheel rocks, and we made it out of Moria.
Yeah, yeah. Lots to discuss there for sure. And Daniel, why are you reading it for the 10th time with us?
Because I found someone to read it with.
It's good enough. It's a good enough excuse for me. It's my first time. And does it get easier the more you read it? Do you start to understand it a little bit more? The rereads.
Yes, definitely. You're trying to catch the story the first time or what you can of it, and not so much the details, probably.
Hmm.
And afterwards, you'll catch the details. Maybe we'll
And
talk about one thing. We'll talk about one thing that's catchable at this point.
okay. And Katerina, did you pick up a lot on this reread? Because you said you've read this one a few months ago. Did you? Was there things that you noticed that you didn't notice the first time?
I don't. I don't think so. I don't think there were maybe a few details that made me think, but I don't feel like there were any big twists. That I knew about coming into it the second time that I was able to see this time. So not really. Like I imagine after I finish the entire series, I will probably feel very differently. But I feel like I'm in the there's just too much I still don't know to really be able to pick up on some clues and foreshadowing right now.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So we start off in chapter 13 with Sorreal, and Katerina, it seems like you're a fan of him, and it's um, start to really feel for him. I think we needed a character like this. That we get for I think we needed someone that was kind of like almost like our eyes in that world, kind of watching and experiencing it the way that he is. But what did you think about Sorreal's journey in these chapters?
Well, the thing I like about Sorwheel is how conflicted he is. And I guess like you're right in some way that also like reflects how you as the reader feel about what's going on. Like we also don't know if the great ordeal is what Kellis seems to be saying that it is. We don't know we don't know much about Kellis at this point. Like we don't know if he's actually like the chosen of the god, if he's a prophet, or he has some ulterior motives. And like those are all the questions, the same questions that Sorwheel is wondering as well. And I just love how lost and confused and what a like just teenager he is, especially in the interactions he has with his new tutor. Like those, I thought it was like a really nice, funny chapter, or at least parts of it. Before we like, it was a nice relief before we go deep into the Solage's chapters.
What did you think about him with these chapters, Daniel? Sorreal.
Yeah, he's like a coming of age story, and terrible world, but he still seems innocent enough at this point. And he's struggling between like the goddess Yatwer being like the god of the weak, choosing him, and Tellus being like a father since everyone is a child to him. So he's torn between the mother and the father. He's he's going through just some sharp learning experiences, and it's fun to join him. And like Katerina said, he's wondering exactly what Tellus is, just like we are at this point still.
Yeah, that those Katerina, you mentioned those sections with the tutor. It almost felt like a different book for a while because it felt really lighthearted and kind of the banter back and forth and their discussions. It felt like a totally different experience. Those sections.
Yeah, I feel like any person who went to high school and had to attend classes, they couldn't care less for could relate to what Sorrel was going through in those scenes. Like my one of my favorite parts is when he's learning about grammar and he's like realizing, oh, there are rules to the way we speak. Like I had no idea, and he's coming to realize like how there are so like how kind of limited his world was up until the great old year showed up, and he's learning about how like complicated and how wide the world is, and I really love that.
And then later he says, "Why should I respect these people? They don't even know how to talk because everyone's just gawking in their own languages." So he's coming to these comprehensions, but he's kind of trying to defy them too, it seems like.
Yeah, and Aeschylus, his mandate teacher is like is like maybe less grumpy version of a commune in some sense. Like maybe I don't know exactly how to describe the difference between the two, but like in some regards they are very similar. Like they're both mandate sorcerers. They're both a little bit on the heavier side. Um, but maybe Kamian, the point at where we meet him in Prince of Nothing, is a little bit less weary. Um, and we also learned that Aeschylus was a spy in Sacarpus, and that he lived there for a few years before the Great Ordeal arrived, which is kind of similar to Akamian and his spying adventures before the Holy War.
These chapters, like, he kind of reminds me of Acamian when he was reflecting on teaching Proyas. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Acamian was a little bit less delusioned back then, and Proyas was a little young kid, so it kind of reminded me of their conversations. I think Acamian has always been more of a skeptic, though, where Aeschylus isn't necessarily a skeptic.
Well,
He
he
seems to
seems to
fully
believe,
believe.
yeah, in Callus, which I mean, it is interesting that there are entire schools of sorcerers who went from like being, thinking they're damned by the gods to now having this complete faith in Callus and in Callus being their savior.
Yeah, it did seem like history was repeating itself a little bit with those interactions, and I love when they talk about the characters from the first trilogy. About they talk about a Kamian and the compendium of the First Holy War, the way that they talk about it and they kind of gossip about it, and um, it's neat to see that different perspective and how other people in this world view that whole situation and kind of the way they talk about him and how Callus stole Espinette from him and kind of the gossip that they have, and it's kind of like a secret that they're afraid to talk about.
Yeah, I mean for sure, like for like the like we read it from the point of view of Esmenet and Akamian, and like for them it was like just like incredibly intimate story that happened to them, whereas for other people, like for other people, that's almost like, well, not ancient history, but it's part of history, like, or like a part of legend and part of the scripture. Um, and it's also interesting for me. Like, it was also interesting for me to see how Taronga talks about the compendium of the Holy War, because when I read those excerpts in the Prince of Nothing, I just took it for given, like that's how things happen, like that's like facts, that's the history. And then now it kind of made me go back and question how objective that retelling of the Holy War actually is.
Yeah, and there's a, I think when they go in the Umbilica, and Kellis speaks to him later in these chapters, all the murals of the First Holy War, where it like shows Kellis in Shimei like floating above everyone, and shows like the battle happening below. So it's all been like scripturized and immortalized in history. So it's like part of scripture. And then all the rumors just surrounding Athenian, his claims, I guess, and the fact that most of them appear to be true to the reader.
Yeah, and also like we learned that there are at least some groups of people in the Three Seas who do not support Kellis. Like that
Right.
there seems to be this some kind of like a hidden resistance, underground movement of people who maybe don't oppose Kellis openly, but don't believe what he's been preaching.
If I saw him do what he's been able to do, I don't know that I'd say I wouldn't be very vocal about it either.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. But I do like that there's little pockets of those whispers that behind the scenes that it's something that they keep private. But I like that not everyone drank the Kool Aid. It's there are some people who still question him.
And there's the scene where uh Aeschylus is trying to explain to Sorwheel what Callus is, and he uses the metaphor of the vase. He takes his vase and he smashes it, and then he tries to explain to Sorwheel that men are men are like fragments of of the vase, and the vase, like if the vase represents the god, then means that people are like fragments of the god, or of the god's soul. And then there's this like small piece inside the, like a smaller vase, like a replica of the big vase. There's a small replica of that vase inside, and he's like trying to explain that Callus is like this incarnation of the god, um which I also find interesting, because he, like, to me, like what he's implying there is kind of that, like, everyone else seems to be part of like the bigger god, but somehow Callus is not part of that. Like he is, like he doesn't, Callus is not one of the fragments in that metaphor. So I was like, it made me wonder, like, what does it mean? Like, does Callus maybe stand outside of the influence of the god, or is he like not a god's child in some sense, unlike other men? Um, I don't know. It was just something that got me thinking when I was reading about the metaphor and thinking about it.
Yeah, that was a cool little part. And then he just picks up like a couple of the fractured pieces of pottery, and he says Like all souls are shaped differently. That's what makes us individual, but we're still all just a fragment of the greater whole. And yeah, who knows if Tellus stands inside or outside. The non-men seem to be cursed with damnation too, and they're really old. They're as old as Tellus's whole race, so
Yeah, it's so mysterious. Like this whole time, first, I didn't even believe that the gods were real, that heaven or hell was real, and now I'm thinking like, so what are like, and now I've come to believe like I'm a believer now, but I don't know what are the gods, like what are souls, how does heaven and hell, like how does it work, like how do you, who decides, or like what decides if you go to hell or heaven, how are the gods involved, like is there actually like a god of gods? There's so many questions about this, and like the more I read, the more questions I'm starting to have. um so no wonder they're like anytime they mention that something about the gods, like I just, my mind runs off and starts thinking in strange directions.
Just hearing all of you and both of you talk about it, kind of occurs to me that we've read, this is the fourth book that we've read, and we know very little about Kellis. Well, I mean, we don't really know exactly. Um, there's just so much we don't know about him and how it all works. It's just kind of to keep us engaged that long and to not really know, then that's quite a feet to pull off.
Yeah,
we're as
and we've
confused
barely seen him in this book.
Hmm.
we're as confused of him as we are of the gods in this book. We're both kind of undefined currently. And I was going to say on Sunday, I asked all those same questions you asked Katerina about our world. Are the gods real? Are soul, do our souls have shapes? What are the gods? What is the outside? That's just a normal Sunday exercise when everyone else is at church.
What were you drinking is my question. No, sorry, that was a bad joke.
No, I
You're
was wondering the same thing.
The Kool-Aid.
What were you
Only the
drinking?
Kool-Aid. Just
Oh,
the
Kool Aid.
Kool-Aid.
Oh, okay. Drinking the Kool Aid. Yeah. So the are you guys ready to move on to the next chapter? The because there's a lot of,
well,
or is there more
I
in this one?
I mean, I guess we mentioned it, but maybe just we can go back to it quickly. It's
Sure.
the sort of the ritual that, what's the slave's name? Pors, like I didn't even write it down. Well,
I have it written down here. Let me see. I have it down.
Bosporian, I think, is the name.
Yeah, Porsporian.
Yeah. So he seems like, from what I gathered, he's like he somehow seems to be connected to Yatwer, and he performs this ritual where mud rises from the ground or something, and he smears it across Sorwheel's face, and Porsporian's eyes go red. Um, and then Kellis does not seem to be able to tell that Sorwheel is not a believer. So it seems like the god has decided to protect Sorwheel from Kellis, and probably she has some like hidden agenda that we don't know about yet. Um, but like, why? Well, this, and I don't like, this is more like an, I don't know if this is actually a question that we can answer, but like, why is Sorwheel, like why is Sorwheel chosen? Like, is it just because Vesporian, or was it somehow planned from the beginning? Um, it the ritual, it kind of reminded me of the ritual that Sadma Nana Fairy performed with the White Light Warrior. Like I think her eyes also went red, and she did. I think like she did smear some, like she smeared blood. I think on the White Light Warrior's face. It's like it's not exactly the same, but I definitely saw some parallels. And like for a brief moment, I it kind of made me think like maybe it was Sorwheel who was supposed to become the White Light Warrior, or maybe there was some kind of like a mixed up, or could there be like more than one? Um, I don't, like I'm not convinced anymore that he is the White Light Warrior, but I think there are definitely some similarities between the two.
Yeah, on page 295, it mentions the not only had the slave's eyes gone red, a trick, some kind of trick, somehow the mouth pressed into the soil face had opened. So hearing that the face had opened kind of reminded me of the skin spies, was what my mind went to for that. Um, Hearing how his face opened.
I think that he just like gets on the ground and carves two lips out of the ground. So it's just really lips, not a whole face. And that's what he does every morning and every night. And if
Uh,
Yatwer really is manifesting a white luck warrior and giving divinity to Satma Nana Fairy and also Sorwell on the other side of the world, and she's just one of 100 gods, right? Then how active are these other gods? How come Yatwer is so active currently?
Maybe Yatwer is a little vase inside the big vase.
Tellus just said that she's his sister. She's just his blind sister.
I don't know. I think it might be some. There might be striving for some sort of balance. Like Kellis is so powerful, and he has um mesmerized so many people that maybe Yatwer is coming to intervene and sort of like restore the balance between the 100 gods. Like it's like if we assume that, well, I guess the 100 gods don't recognize Kellis as the incarnation of the god of gods. I would think maybe they think of him as more like an equal. So maybe it's like her trying to put him in his place. Um, I don't know. I mean, this is like I'm just speculating.
There's a part where Kellis talks to Esmet, and she's wondering why the gods would war against him if he is like the god. He says that they're blind to they're blind to what goes on in this world. So they don't understand his purpose. They only understand the threat, I guess. Kind of. That's what he says anyways.
Yeah, but what is the threat? I mean, it seems the thing he's trying to do is to protect um the world from the Inquiry and from them shutting the world from the outside. And I imagine the gods, like if you shut the world from the outside, then the gods probably wouldn't have a way to intervene in our world, like the in our reality. So shouldn't they be on Callus's side? Maybe they know something that Callus doesn't know.
Maybe Kellis knows something they don't know.
I also remember it talking about the 100 gods being blind to the no god too. They didn't know that it was destroying the world or that it could. Who knows if they're just also fragments of this space with bigger shapes, maybe bigger fragments of the base of God. Or maybe they're the liquid inside of the base when it breaks.
Okay. Well, I guess it would make sense then that Callus is sort of standing apart from everyone. Like if he is the one who, like we sort of know that he can talk to the no god, or at least he can hear the no god. And if the god, so maybe if everyone with a soul is not able to hear the no god, then it makes sense that Callus has to be somehow different, like somehow separated from them. I think we went too deep into the rabbit hole.
It's easy to go to these rabbit holes, though. It's easy to get into them.
The rest of these chapters have a ghost and a heart with an eyeball. So we're getting into some obscure horror, less based in this reality or a reality that we can understand.
That was one of my questions. Like, where are we? Are we still here, or are we somewhere else?
We're gonna have an existential crisis during these discussions.
It was a tough trip through the mountains. I don't know exactly how long they were there for. 30 days, something.
Through the mines.
Was Yeah, I think it was a couple of days at least, and then a
It
couple of
took
days going up
Mhm.
through the
took them like
screw.
4 days just to go up, and they went across and down the whole time. So who knows? They eventually quit sleeping too.
And the okay, so on page 303, when Akemi is having a dream, he he notices that he realizes that he's unseen, an insubstantial witness alone. Where is Saswatha? I don't think that's happened before, right? Saswatha's always there with him, or helping, like, guiding him. That's the first time that he's been alone, right? To my
It definitely hasn't happened. It didn't happen prior to this book. It might have happened early in this book as well. I'm not sure, but it's either the first or the second time, I would say.
okay,
And it is strange because he's supposed to be dreaming Seswatha's life. So why is Seswatha not there?
yeah, that was great.
I think it might have happened in another dream, but it's like recognized to them. They know where they are and what's happening. In this, he just sees a whole bunch of raccoon fighting in the air, and it's all unfamiliar to him, and has no clue where Siswatha is. We also
And
get some more like breaking into the dreams when one of them asks who Namara is.
Yeah, that was great.
so do you think he's still dreaming Seswatha's, like, is he still dreaming about Seswatha, like, and his experiences, or has he transcended to some like higher level dreamland?
He drank the sleepy time tea, and he's next level now.
I don't know. Towards the end, it talks a lot about like how he's being pulled by the whore, which is fate. Fate is the whore. And he realizes it has this grasp on him because all of a sudden Amara shows up, who's like his ex-lover's old daughter, and, and then she has the judging eye, which is a crazy disease or something. And just the group he finds himself with, an odd man and the captain, and he just realizes that it wasn't him who decided this, probably. He even like says he was making up the coffers all the way up to the point where he dreams and figures out that the scroll was in the coffers. So, like, how much choice did Akinian really have up till this point?
it does all seem to come a little bit too conveniently together. Like especially the part about the coffers. Like it can be a coincidence that he tells her when they need to go to the coffers. Like he gives that as an excuse, and then he finds out that that's where the map of Ishwal actually is located. I'm not buying that that's a coincidence.
It reminds me of the first series when Kellis is found sitting on Snare's father's grave by Nair, and just what is coincidence and what is not coincidence.
That's right.
So
Yes. So are you suggesting that there is someone pulling the strings in the background?
I don't know. I think a big theme of this book is free will. Like how much free will do people have when Kellis like talks to them, right? And then in the greater aspect, how much free will does humanity have from the outside world? Free will is a big theme of the entire series, I would say, though.
Hmm. There's a there's a great quote that I had. Well, I thought it was pretty good on 323. When they're talking about, they're asking why do men fear the dark, and because darkness is ignorance made visible. And do men despise ignorance? I asked. No, he said. They prize it above all things, but only so long as it remains invisible.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that quote. I also had it highlighted.
Oh, good. Okay, I wasn't the only one.
yeah, that was a good one. And then there was darkness shields as much as it threatens, which is good. And then where before the dark had enclosed them, now it exposed them.
Mhm.
It's like you hide in a cave from something, and then all of a sudden something's in the cave, and now you're exposed. It's just I like the way R. Scott Baker plays with words.
And it gives you maybe a little bit more, well, I don't know if understanding is the right word, but um it to know that the non-men worship, or that they worship the unknown, that it's kind of like it makes them even more alien to humans. I think that, like, I think men or people are like, humans are more like generally more about like trying to get to the nitty gritty, like trying to get as much knowledge as possible, whereas like the non-men seem much more aware of the limits of their knowledge, and how kind of small it makes them in the context of the universe, I guess.
Could it be because of their age, and that's why they have that different perspective?
Maybe. Did you read the what came before section
Yes,
of the book?
yes, that was great. It took me, I know it was only like 5 pages, but it took me a good half an hour to get to really absorb it, and I'm not sure I still do, but there is a ton. There's a ton in those five those 5 pages, so it really helped me understand what's going on, and kind of where everyone's coming from.
Yeah, the first time I read it, I I feel like it explained the previous three books, or even like the four books that I read, much better than what I understood when I read them.
Yeah.
Especially like the ancient history with the non-men and the Inkaroi. I mean, like now that I've read five of these books, and like I've read the appendices, it kind of sort of makes sense to me, at least the you know, at least like the bigger picture. But the first time I found the this what came before section really helpful to like help me ground myself in the history.
Now, when you said that, I laughed because I felt the exact same way. I'm relieved. It's not just me because I felt sometimes when I feel like how did I miss all this, or where did I not catch this? And after so many books, you'd figure that you'd have a better hold on it. And so hearing you say that makes me feel relieved that I'm not alone and feeling that way, because we're 4 books in, and there's still a lot that is really not too clear. But those few pages at the end really helped fill in a lot of the history.
Yeah, that was all vaguely alluded to or talked around, like a lot of that non-min history and stuff, but it wasn't put together in a package for the reader. I think that's one of his best talents, is to be able to take these giant, confusing books and then in like 7 pages just lay out the whole plot. When I would think about trying to lay the plot out, it would be nearly impossible. It'd be 50 pages at least. But he has just some kind of way with words, whether it be flowery prose or concise description of the past.
Yeah, I read it. I mean, it's at the end of, like, I think in the in the sequel to this. I think there is also like the same section, but at the beginning of it, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, but here it's at the end of the book, because I don't understand why. Because I mean, it doesn't spoil anything that happens in this book. Um, but I did read it at the very end, and like weirdly, it kind of reminded me of um the prologue that Galadriel narrates in the first Lord of the Rings film. Like, she also talks about this ancient history, and then like the betrayals and the sort of the dawn of man, and then she finishes in like the current time, the contemporary period. And it really reminded me of that. Like, even like the style of the narration, it's like it starts with this, like, oh, like, what is like war, or like what does war mean in history. It's all like very grandiose, and I don't know. It reminded me of that.
I felt the exact same way, and especially the portions of men forget, because they forget the horrors that their fathers endured, and it all had that same really that same kind of um, epic feeling of retelling this history. And I could hear her voice, retelling or reading those few pages. It felt like how men came to retake the lands, and they forgot what really happened, and everyone kind of just moved on. So yeah, that I had the same I had the same thoughts reading that too.
I didn't read it after the book. I think I accidentally opened book 2 and read that first before I started this book. But I remember there being the part about how the first men used flint, and then they like learned how to use stone. So the fact that he added like that much history to this is cool. And then later there's like the non-men original language that they have no clue what is anymore, called the Wamwa slaves, writing
And
their chicken scratch on the walls. Just a lot of forgotten history. I even think at one part, what does it say? It says something about, oh yeah, they had been enslaved for 10,000 years in that inside of there, which is that's how much history is in this world, I guess.
And then the men who came from the east kill all the human slaves. Why?
so that's what men do, I guess. But yeah, the and then you mentioned the portion about the evolution, how we moved from stone to flint, and how things evolved. And that was only like, I don't know, less than 10 words, but in those just few words does so much with them, so much that like you said, he packs in a lot in just a short packet, a small package.
Yeah, there there's so it's kind of like Game of Thrones. Like there's a lot of history before the original books that I guess George R. R. Martin just decided to write about, the Blood and Fire or whatever it's called. And I'm sure he could go back thousands of years. I don't know how old people are in his books. We're discovering that people are at least probably at 10 to 15,000 years old in these books. Maybe they evolved from monkeys, I guess. Who knows? I remember it talking about them coming through some kind of a passage from another land. The first men, and there was like five different. They broke up into five groups or something, and they were the slaves of the non-men, and then the non-men decided they sucked, so they got shrank. They made shrank instead, because they looked like them and they liked the
Wait,
same
what?
things.
Did uh, non-men made this rank? I thought it was the Inkroy.
Maybe, maybe I'm wrong. I do remember him saying, like when they first see the shrink down in the mountain, it says that they look like non-men. They look the exact same, but their heads are pinched. And they got like sharp teeth instead of normal teeth, but their teeth are fused just like non-men's teeth.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. They definitely are described to look very similar. But like the way I understood it is that the Inkroy took non-men DNA, I guess, and then somehow made a a debased version of non-men that was like less intelligent but more like susceptible to the Inkroy's commands. Like the way I understood the strength is that they're basically like a biological weapon against the non-men.
Maybe they are. I just know that non-men decided that they were better slaves at some point. And then the humans came back and tried to kill all of them.
I
Okay.
hope I didn't. Did you find anything, Steve?
Yeah, I think so. So a little long, but I think for context, it's the first page of what has come before. The third paragraph. The non-men held sway in those ancient days, a long-lived people that surpassed men not only in beauty and intellect, but in wrath and jealousy as well. When Eroshi with their Eroshi heroes and Quaya mages, they fought titanic battles and stood vigilant against during epochal truces. They endured the inquiry weapons of light. They survived the treachery of the Poietics, who provided their foe with thousands of sorcery killing Korai. They overcame the horrors of their enemy crafted to people his legions, the Shrank, the Bashrag, and, most fearsome of all, the Raku. But their avarice at last betrayed them. After centuries of intermittent war, they made peace with the invaders in return for the gift of ageless immortality, a gift that was, in fact, a foul weapon, the plague of wombs. Um, so they crafted the Shrank, the Bash Dragon, the Raku, the dragon, right?
Yeah, I think so. That makes sense to me. Um,
And then the non-men just made them slaves, I guess, after they reconciled.
Yeah, I think so. That's well, they were given immortality, and that was the plague of wombs, right? That's what um, there's like a curse. It was like a trick, is the way I read it.
It's what I think weakened them enough for men to be able to go in and take them all out, probably.
Well, I kind of got the impression that some of them were. Well, I think it mentions that when men came to retake the lands, they were either overwhelmed with numbers, like there was too many men for them to fight off, or they just accepted it. They were just. I kind of felt like they were like the way I read it was they were just tired. They were just was like, I'm done.
Yeah, I think I I think I read it more literally. Well, I guess the assumption behind the plague of wombs is that all the women died, right?
Hmm.
So if there are no women, you cannot procreate. So the population just keeps decreasing until there are very few non-men alive. And even though they're like extremely old and powerful, they're just, I guess, eventually the men or the strang would be able to overpower them just like purely because of greater numbers.
Hmm.
Even when Acadian's describing a dragon, he's like, they're not like bears. They won't just attack. They know humans will just get another 1,000 humans. If they kill a couple, then 10,000 will come. If they kill 10,000, then 100,000 will come. So it's better to just let the humans go.
So you both mentioned the eye and the heart. That whole this whole sequence of or the whole journey um, through the mines. That was at reading it when I went back to kind of check the tabs I had and to write some notes down. It's very intense. I didn't when I'm going back and rereading it. It's very like blood pumping. It gets you really get that because you always feel that they're never safe and they're always being pursued or someone's watching and all these things are happening to them and they're all dying. Well, not all of them are dying, but some of them are. And all the sounds they hear and yeah, it's a great section.
Yeah, it's maybe, I mean, it's certainly one of my favorite chapters in the entire series, if not the favorite chapter. But I listened to it on audio, and I was exhausted when I finished it. it was it was first of all, it was almost 3 hours, which is quite long for these
Wow.
books. Um, but also just the tension and like you never like, are they gonna make it, or like what else is going to jump out at them from the dark? And like my Mara's always thinking like this, like she's basically like all like constant thinking like this is where I'm going to die, like
Yeah.
this is where I'm going to die. and and I mean, I really like that it's told mostly from her point of view. I think the present tense in this particular scene actually works really well. um it's a great chapter, but it's also like very confusing. Like, is you like, like what does it mean? What is the heart, and what is the eye inside the heart? Like, who put it there? um whose eye is it? Like the guy they meet, I think he still has both of his eyes. So
Mhm.
whose eye is inside his heart, and who put it there? Or wait, what does it mean? Are we even supposed to take it literally?
I don't
I don't
know.
know, but it scared the hell out of me.
He does say, "I can't see, even with the light. I can't see." So he's still thinking he is the other eye somehow, or he knows the eye still can't see, even with the light. But why? Who knows? We just know that it's a topos that it's something like the plains of Mangetta. Only instead of them being on the surface where the bones are just coming out of the ground, they're already deep in it by the lake of lava.
Well, they mentioned that, right? They mentioned the plains of Mangetta, and they said this kind of like that. They're kind of comparing the two. But yeah, uh, Daniel, I get the impression that you enjoy the like we don't know. Like all these little things that we were questioning, and I bet it's. I wonder if it's tough for you to not tell us, or if you even know, but because you've read the whole series.
Just no spoilers. But we do know that it is Utopos, and that Acadian basically thinks he's walked right up to the front door of hell. Most of them think that they're like right at the front door of hell, so close that there's ghosts. So
And
who knows when you're like on at the veil of the outside, what makes it through or where the line is anymore.
I didn't think Akamian would make it. I thought Akamian would die. I thought he would die and Mimira would take over or kind of take his place in the story. He survived. Well, he survived, but the bash rag is pretty close to the ball rag, isn't it?
What is the ball rag?
Isn't that the monster in the mines? Is it the ball rag or the ball something? Maybe I'm wrong.
Are, w-
In
are
Lord
you
of the
talking
Rings,
about these? Oh, Lord of the Ring. Oh, are you talking about Belrog?
Belrock. I'm sorry. Yeah, but there's it's a little close. It was a little on the nose at that.
I don't know. I mean, it's been what, at least 15 years, maybe more, since I read Lord of the Rings. Um, so like the only like the imagery of Balrog that I have is like purely just the movies,
Hmm.
and I don't think there are as that similar. But I genuinely don't remember how he's described in the Lord of the Rings books.
I thought it. I like that it. I think he was inspired, or he it was paying. I kind of took it as he's paying homage to the mines in this section. But I appreciate what that he put his spin on it. That he kind of did his he sent it more down a horror, give it more of a horror feel with the eyes and the hearts and
Yeah, I think the scariest moment for me is when they run all the way down to the amphitheater, the lava amphitheater, and then everyone's resting and it seems like they finally made it through. And then Maimara like looks over her shoulder and she sees the non-man king, and she's like, "Who is this? It's not a cleric. Who is this?"
yeah, I love that too.
And then the iron bones, that's pretty cool.
The dragon bones.
Yeah, rusted iron.
Yeah, that also it that remind me a little bit of The Hobbit as well, with the dragon under the mountain. I guess it's a shame that we only get to see the skeleton, but
We did get confirmation that there has to be more dragons out there. Tinian doesn't say how many, but he said once the No Dot like lost control of them, they just became lazy, just left. Now they're just a bunch of lazy dragons around. He also, Tinian also says that there's only probably 1,000 non-men left, and that's why him not knowing who Cleric is or Incariol is strange. Probably because that is one of his more recent names or something like that. They
yeah, but
definitely say that he's old. He's as old as all the oldest non-men.
I think it's safe to assume that he probably is someone important. Like he does call the non-man king cousin,
Hmm.
so I would at least assume he's some kind of royalty among the non-men. But it's still very mysterious.
What does Acadian call him? An Ishroy nobleman or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. That's
And then as Mimara is witnessing what he's doing, she just keeps thinking that Just keeps thinking Ethereal, Ishroy, and she doesn't understand what he is still. But she agrees with the Kenyan now that there's something about Cleric, who was almost dead until the very last page.
That last page, that last line was that ending is great. I loved it, and I kind of felt I kind of felt bad after that for complaining about how boring those other sections were earlier in this book about Akami and get kind of the journey, and I kind of felt because the setup was worth it. I think it was worth the payoff.
I'm like, am I supposed to believe that the cleric somehow survived being possessed by hell? Like that he just like walked off unscathed? I'm a little bit suspicious that he's come out unharmed from that experience.
And I think it talks about like all of the skin eaters not coming out unscathed except for, what does Mimara say? She names two of them. That
What's his name?
Kiampus
Soma?
and Somendaku.
I think Campus is dead. Um, yeah, I think Soma,
Huh.
the Nilnemeshi.
And I can't remember the other one. There's two of them that, when they were climbing out of the stairs, appeared unharmed. And there was a part when she had her judging eye opened, and Soma came to help her, and she said something weird. Did you guys catch that?
No, you didn't.
I'm not sure. I mean, I remember she sort of like sees through the core. Like
Oh, this
she
is when
sees,
she
she's
says she didn't like feel safe around the any of the men of the skin eaters, but she felt safe around Soma only because he's no man at all.
oh right, she does say that.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I get all like to be frank, I don't like. I get all of them mixed up. Like, there's like Soma, Suda, Campus, Sampus,
Was it Pau Pau something?
Paquus,
Paquas? Yeah.
Botswana,
Aquas.
I would say now we're down to probably 10 or 15 though, right? 8 maybe? Down to like 8 or 9.
Yeah, I think we're like less than 10 now after
Yeah,
the
it's
screw.
like they barely got started. Like they're like almost like just left from Marrow, and now they're like down from 30 to 10 people. Like,
I'm kind of surprised that many survived.
It reminds me of the Holy War. These
yeah,
are
but
the tempered 10.
but they still have like 95% of the journey ahead of them.
Zero mules left.
Poor
Just
mules.
some curry, hopefully. Whatever that is. Hopefully they got some more of that.
Yeah.
What was the mule?
Um
Miracle, or what was the mule's name?
I
That
don't know. He got named, and then 1 page later, he was dead.
yeah.
it got cut into pieces by a bashrag, I think. Um Also, what's the what's the name of the skin eaters leader? Lord, is it Casoter?
Yeah,
So there's the one point where they talk about hell. And someone asks if they're in hell, and
I
he's like,
remember.
"Wait, what? Is he serious? Like, has he actually been to hell? Like, is it possible for a person to go? to hell and then come back. And then why was he, if that's actually true, like why was he in hell, and why did he come back? um I It was so many questions.
Yeah, who knows what he meant? Who knows what? I think what was Non-Menki saying through the mouths of Takemi, and he says something like, "I am the god."
Oh yeah, yeah, he does say that. I have that chapter somewhere.
And then right afterwards, he's like, "But do gods get hungry?" Because he's also like, feeling hungry. So,
There was um there was one line on 379 that I had kind of related, but um, darkness swirls as though it were liquid, chasing cracks in the light. And she understands with graven finality, no one recognizes their own death. It comes inevitable and absolute. It comes as a stranger.
yeah, that was a good passage. I think even Athenian thinks he's dead at one point in this. There's just like a 3 paragraph little section of his thoughts. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna die here." They all thought they were gonna die. I think even Lord Desoder like backs away once eventually after the non-name king takes over cleric or does whatever he did to cleric.
It did seem like a possession,
Mm-hmm.
but then a commune collapses a tunnel on him, right? So maybe that's what frees him. Because then at the very end, once they make it through to the waterfall, to the screw, um he like the king sort of like comes from like the bottom of the well, I guess. And I think Maimara is the only one who can see the seal of hell. Which, like, first of all, why does hell have a seal? What does it mean? Like, what is this? But then, like, she's able to she's able to make him back off by using the core, which also just makes me makes me, you know, question like everything I thought about the cores up until to this point. Um, like I guess I just didn't even think they were actually tears of God, but now it seems like they have some sort of like connection to, I mean, if they're able to repel hell, I guess they have some connection to heaven. So are they actual tears of God? And like if which God, or like are they tears of the God? So is there like the God of gods? Like is he, or is that real?
Holy water.
And like why is it because of the judging eye? Like is that how she is able to like connect to the core?
Hmm. Well, with the judging eye, she can see sin, right? With the judging eye. So that's the way I thought. That kind of the way I took it is she can see. She saw the seal because she can see sin.
I think everything else she's seen has all been black and damned. I forgot how she describes the kid when she looks at him, but
Oh yeah.
it's real bad. He's going to hell for sure.
It's on.
And then when she looks at the core, it's like a glowing white, radiant light. It's like the only thing that's shown positive energy instead of damnation up to this point in her judging eye.
So who made the core? Like do we know at this point? Are we supposed to know? or is it does it remain mysterious? Because
No, but
I
I
don't
think
think I know.
when Steve was reading that very first part about what comes before, it talked about the Kore being like brought in some kind of a war. I can't remember the name of the war. That was in that chapter of what has come before that Steve read. That war.
Wait, so did the Inkroi make the Kore? That doesn't seem right. Maybe I can find it. Oh,
Well,
okay. It says they survived the treachery of the Apparetics. I have no idea who that is. Who provided their foe with thousands of sorcery killing Kore.
hmm.
Well, I guess the foe is are the Inkroi, so it wasn't the Inkroi who made the Kore. But I mean, I don't. This is the first time I hear about the Apparetics, or if I have heard of them before, I don't remember.
So we don't
Um,
know yet. But I assume if some gods can make spit come up from dirt mouths and do stuff like that, then maybe they can bless some trinkets.
Maybe. But I mean, as far as we know, no one can make the Kore now. Like, no one has the ability. Like, they're so precious because there's so few of them and no one knows how to make them, I think.
That's true. But there's only one spit that can conceal someone's face from the Aztec Emperor. So that's way more rare than a Kore. It's only one White Wolf warrior, maybe. That's more rare than a Kore.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a good point.
in regards to Mimira seeing Akami on 367, I thought it was I had it tabbed, but she sees Akami as others do, stooped in his mad hermit robes, his beard stiff against his breast, his complexion the dark of long used skins. She sees the mark soiling his colors, blasting his edges, and though his eye as the and though her eyes blink and roll against it, she sees the judgment. He is carrion, he is horror, his skin is burned to paste. Druus Acamian is damned.
So, my question is he damned because he's a sorcerer, or is he damned because he's a bad person? Because Callus seems to be saying that sorcerers are not damned, at least like not by default. Like just just because you're doing sorcery, just because you're casting spells doesn't automatically mean you're going to be damned in the afterlife. Um, but then a comment seems to suggest that because my Mara can see that he's damned or that cleric is damned, that's a proof that Callus is lying, or that what he's saying is not true.
Let me find there's a section that talks about the judging eye. I think it mentions. Let me find it really quickly. On
Acadian
336.
wants her to look at Kellis with the judging eye to see what she sees, and he also thinks that, I guess, the day that Kellis said the words that they're not damned, it washed away their blackness. But that's only if you assume that the tusk is the real religious scripture. That's the real God's word, not the solitary God's words, because they're different beliefs. I think Memora knows what's damned and what's not damned better than anyone currently. So some words in the tusk being rewritten aren't going to change the, what the truth is, whatever the truth is.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. What is the truth?
I don't know.
um,
It'll be
yeah.
fun to read the atrocity tales. There's some atrocity tales that are good as far as this goes. Maybe we can read after the next book.
On 336, when they're talking about the judging eye, it means that you don't simply apprehend, or I'm sorry, it seems you don't. You see the mark of sorcery, but you see the sin as well. He trailed, then laughed, despite the horror that flexed through him. And a little bit later, he says, "Think if sorcery is no longer abomination, then let her think it. Let her think it was this." He told himself. Perhaps it would even serve to discourage her. So it sounds like there may be sin. Maybe Kellis is not being is misleading with that one, but I may have misread that.
I do get the impression that Akamian is not telling the entire truth to Maimara either. Like it does seem like he's holding some information back from her. Um and and like particularly with respect to the judging eye and what it means, and um I don't know if it's related to like sorcery like automatically leading to damnation. Um I don't think he's being completely honest with her. But I don't know. Like I'm kind of thinking if you're a sorcerer, like you have this incredible power, and most probably like you're going to use it to manipulate people, torture people, kill people. So even if sorcery doesn't like even if being sorcerer doesn't automatically mean that you're damned, maybe the actions, maybe the things you do just because you have this power will lead you to damnation anyway. So maybe it doesn't matter in the end.
If we go by like the common Christian version of what would damn you, I'd say most of your ways are damned. Maybe
Yeah,
Sorwell's innocent. He did pick on kids though, so
there are not many good people in this world, at least that we have encountered. So it would be interesting for Mara to meet someone who is not damned in her eyes.
the fact that Namara seems to just like know some things, it's really set my Nana Fairy like. That makes sense. She's like, I know these slaves have been here for 10,000 years, but how she doesn't know how she knows. So who knows what the judgment is?
And like how can we even tell if what she's seeing is actually true? I mean, until that person is dead and in hell, we have no way of proving that she's actually like correct in reading those signals.
Maybe they were in hell. I don't
Maybe
know.
she's just imagining things. Maybe she's just a crazy prostitute from Garethusel. Probably not, but
Could be.
I think they all kind of went crazy by the time they made it out. Even Sorrel, who was like crazy to begin with, is now a weeper. And now probably the most crazy guy around, it seems like. He was just crying and laughing and whispering to himself.
yeah, he seems like he's definitely lost it.
As you probably as anyone probably would in there. I
There's a
did like
part
that.
where Memara was like, Will it be the good part of me that gets out of here? Because I'm definitely leaving some parts behind.
Yeah.
Everyone is.
Yeah, she said she parts of her won't survive. Let's hope it's the lesser parts.
Yeah, but I
Speaking
mean,
of,
we know that she's a survivor. Like she's survived all those years in slavery. She's survived the Edmanian Heights. Um, I don't know if the better parts of her made it through, but she is a survivor, I think, just like her mother.
I think I don't know if it was fear she was thinking about, but then she's like, I used to think fear was just like talking to my mom, but now I really know what fear is.
And it does put things into perspective.
so there was a couple of things in the last section, but before um, something I was wondering about, and I may have missed it, but on 412, um, the it talks about the gates no longer being guarded.
That's when Mara says, I'm guarding the gates.
Right. Yeah. So that I wasn't quite sure how that all happened. I hold the gates. So that was her. That was her doing that, right?
Yeah, she was doing that with the help of the Kore, I
Okay.
think. Um, and but she does say something interesting in that scene, like when the hell is trying to come through. I think she talks about like eyes opening in the hearts of the men around her. I don't know, I didn't write it down, but I do remember her describing it that way. um and it kind of reminded me of the eye in the heart of the pick they meet in the mines. But I think it was just one small line. Not sure if I'll be able to find it.
Oh, in a moment of madness, it seems that she can see their hearts through their caged breasts, that she can see the eyes open.
Oh yeah, it's page 412.
Oh, I missed it.
So it doesn't mean that they also have eyes in their hearts now.
And see if they start saying how they can't see. Technically, the judging eye is like a heart's eye, isn't it? Does that make sense? She sees the purity of people, good and the bad, which is like what we associate with heart. So the judging eye is like a heart that sees, sort of.
Maybe there are a lot of weird things in these last few chapters.
It definitely took a real horrorish turn the closer we got to the outside. But then the other topos in the first book was kind of weird too. Bones washing up, Katerina having horrible dreams, everyone going crazy from horrible dreams. So it was a little bit of horror in the first series, whereas this one is another little bit of horror in this series. So maybe there is something to Topos. I mean, maybe there is something to the outside and the underneath.
Gonna shut out the
I was
outside.
scared. Sorry.
No, just we're gonna shut out the outside.
The scope and scale of it all was crazy. Like them talking about how big this cave is and how Like the murals have little murals written all across them because the non-men can't see paintings. It just looks like a blur to them. I guess like a magic eye. Remember those magic eye posters when we were kids that are just a blur until you like lose your focus and then they take shape?
Yeah. This never worked for me, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And then
Maybe you're a non-man.
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah.
the Kenyans just says that they're not human. They might seem somewhat human, but they're pretty far from human.
Yeah, that's definitely the sense I get just from the physical descriptions, but also the way that cleric talks and their philosophy, at least the little we have heard about it so far. They do feel very alien, very non-human, non-men.
Yeah, we did get one cleric sermon. It was pretty good. I think that's when he was kind of talking about why worship a god that you're not ignorant of, how powerful ignorance is.
Okay, I think we went through all my questions, so I guess we can move on to the interlude.
Yes. That's, oh, these kids. Those darn kids. Um, he looks at you funny.
I like the fact that Kalmomas single-handedly managed to like, completely undermine all of Esminet's political efforts in this book.
Mhm.
Estinets, Nathanets, Kellises, it's all overturned. And he seems to realize it only like offhandedly. He doesn't care. He only cares about his mom. I guess if this affects his mom a lot and makes her too busy to play with him, he'll figure out how to stop it. He just wants her attention.
Yeah, but he also, I mean, he does seem to enjoy at least a little bit the feeling of being the puppet master um behind the scenes that no one knows about.
Yeah, he whispers, but he has more power, pretending to fall asleep. He would open his eyes. He would open his eyes later when her breathing slipped into long trough of dreams. Unseen rulers never slumbered, not truly. Such a creepy. Oh, a little creep.
And it seems like that whole little bit, he's trying to sow some like some distrust between Nathanet and Essenet.
Yeah, and we know that Esmenet is already a little bit suspicious of Mathanet. Like she thinks that there has to be some reason why Kellis doesn't trust him or doesn't trust him enough to put him in charge of the empire. Um, and I guess Klamomus is probably aware of that, and he's feeding into that sense of suspicion. But it's interesting to me. Like he's essentially doing the same thing as Callus does to everyone, but for some reason it feels much more malicious or much more. It makes me more concerned um, when Calmomas does it than when it's Callus who's doing it.
Because one's like an adult about it and he's a child about it.
Yeah, I guess Callus has or seems to have a like agenda, or he seems to know why he's doing it. Like Helmowitz kind of just seems to do it because it's fun, and he has this weird fixation on his mom. Uh, but I guess ultimately we don't know if if Kellis is more in the right than Kalmuma's.
Well, I think too it's because we know that Kellis has received a lot of training and he's more. Get the impression that he's deliberate or he has an end goal in mind. With Columbus, it's you wonder if he's just a psychopath. Well, I guess Kellis could be called that too, but I think you know what I mean.
There's
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk about the dummy being like emotionless too. So when they have kids with Essenet who's not emotionless, then these little kids get random bits of human emotion that break them in this way or that way, maybe too. That makes sense. Which is why the daughter can't like stare people in the eyes. She stutters. Who knows why Enrolatus is locked up in his room currently?
Uh, so in the I so I had complained too about Noir, and I was hoping that he wouldn't come back. But when I read in the dark the end section that he before his death he uh, he told Okamian about Kellis, I got a little sad because I thought maybe he would come back.
Oh, I missed that part. Well, what
I
can I
was upset.
say?
Yeah.
I miss him dearly. But
We did get.
maybe he.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that maybe, considering the things that are probably coming, maybe it's better he's already checked out. But maybe he's burning somewhere in hell. Well, he most certainly is. So who knows? Um, who knows?
Yeah. I did like the last section of the book. That the nameless war is nameless no longer. Men call it the Great Ordeal.
Yeah, why like I don't understand. Hopefully we'll find out. But why is the sixth book the Great Ordeal when we've been with the Great Ordeal for well at least one book now, and I think it's safe to assume for another book at least as well. I mean, it's probably you don't have to answer that. That's just something that I find strange.
I love the faces Daniel makes. He's trying to think of
Maybe
what to
maybe
say.
I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know. I was just surprised like when I the first time I read these I saw the titles of the books in the Ask Great Emperor series, and I said, okay, the third book is the Great Ordeal. I guess that's where we joined the Great Ordeal, and then I started judging and it's like, oh, the Great Ordeal has already left the three seas.
Maybe there's a
It's
reason. I don't know. None of the
it's
first books,
completely random.
none of the first books were called the First Holy War, though, right? None of them described the events necessarily in them. How long has the Great Ordeal been happening, too? Didn't they say it's been happening for 7 years already or something like that?
Yeah, it's
Right
been
after the
ongoing.
Unification Wars ended, then the Great Ordeal pretty much started. They took all of the men from the city, and now it's just a bunch of little kids and women that Eskinet's trying to rule over.
I kind of I when I finished this one, I thought we have three more books to go, and I got a little sad because I don't know if I want the series to end. So it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I almost feel like I almost forgot that this was the end of the book. Like as much as I enjoyed the last chapter or the last like couple of chapters, it doesn't really feel like an ending. It's like, especially like for me because I also read the book that comes after this one. It's just feel it's like again like I guess it's similar to the darkness that comes before. It does kind of feel like a prologue, like we're just like putting pieces, like setting up pieces on the chessboard. Like it's not like we like Akamian's barely left his tower. Like he's not even made it through the mountains yet, and it's been like 400 pages. Um,
This is true, and it ended without like saying anything that happened to Esme until the last page, which is the prelude. So it didn't tie things up as well as the darkness that comes before did in the first book for sure. We got very little revelation with Sorwell. It pretty much just went back to Acadian and this game just for the last 70 or 80 pages, I feel like.
It's quite a bit.
So since we still got stories going on in three different parts of the world, it didn't tie up together as good.
yeah, I
I
feel like the distinction between the books kind of blurs. Like already, like I already think of the Prince of Nothing as sort of like one book split into three parts, but I think it's even more true about the Aspect Emperor. Like I don't, for me, like there's not really like a clear beginning, like clear end of the Judging Eye, and then like clear beginning of the White Like Warrior. Like it's kind of just you could have maybe split it in other parts and would probably work as well.
I, I think that this was supposed to be a set of three, and so maybe the splitting happened in between the first and the second book. That makes sense. It was supposed to be two trilogies, but one big duology to end it. It ended up being a trilogy and a quadrilogy and emptiness currently.
Emptiness. Yeah. So we'll be start. What's the next one? Is the White Luck Warrior, and Katerina. That's the one that you. That's the last one you read, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
that's correct. You're almost caught up.
Thanks. Thanks. So Daniel will be the only one who's the last two books. He's be the only one who read the last two. So we've almost caught up. But so we'll
Another
start that
month.
one another month. Yeah. So we'll take a look at that and figure out how many pages we'll start with next week. But in the meantime, Katerina, if anyone wants to get in touch with you and tell you how awesome Saban is, where would they get in touch with you?
Well, I've not been very good at keeping up with messages and so on, but you can still find me on the Page Doing forum, and I'm also on Instagram at the Errand.
And Daniel, where can people not find you?
In the comments section of this video or on page 2. I
Cool.
do want to add, we didn't talk about Kellis floating around the village
Oh yeah, when
and
he
catching
exploded.
his skin spy,
I forgot about that. Yeah, I had that written down too.
and also uh, Sorwell like looks at the two emperors and decides Savon's kind of exactly like Katerina thinks.
That's why you like Star Wheel so much.
And
Among other reasons.
one other thing, like we know that the Dunyin in such a short amount of time have been able to like alter their genetic makeup seemingly and be more than human. The non-men, after all those years, have like forgot and became something else entirely. And then we found out that they have these slaves that they kept in like a black pit for 10,000 years, just breeding and breeding them in caves. So I wonder what those Yamwama slaves really look like. Like
Hmm.
by the time the humans found them, how human were they? Or did they just think they were killing something terrible? If that makes sense.
Hmm.
I know that when a spider gets trapped inside of a cave and like the outside closes, it loses its eyeballs. Most animals lose their eyeballs if they live in caves for too many generations because it's an unnecessary organ.
I did not even think of that.
Me neither.
But well, I thought it was scary before, and now I'm completely the images in my mind are I'm not gonna have a good night of sleep today, I think.
Katerina's not tired anymore. Yeah.
I apologize. I think the thing that affected me the most, they get all the way out of the mountain and they're walking across the ice and it's just full of like children and women frozen in the ice.
Yeah.
Who knows how that happened, but or how many of them there were dead in there. That was pretty
Yeah,
horrifying to me. So to get out into the white light and then it's still to just be as dark as right next to the gate of hell.
Good
yeah,
stuff.
there's so many moments in that chapter that stand out that there are only so many we can talk about, I guess, within
Oh,
hour and a half.
the one funny part where Acadians like if they didn't follow us, they'll be able to follow us by the trail of shit I left.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Basically saying he got scared and shit his pants, so they don't even know where they
That's
are.
right. That's right.
And then there was a part where S and Ned like shows I think someone doctor the core and he's man, I've been trying to pound out those dragon's teeth. You already have your fortune. What's going on here? Those are two kind of funny parts.
There's so much in that one chapter. There's so many things that were happening.
Yeah, I would reread it, but I was exhausted when I finished it. There's so much. It's so like it's so intense. There's so many scary, spooky moments. But as you said, also some funny scenes as well.
No
Yeah.
reapers on the slog.
Yeah. On the slog.
We still have 3 books to read, so you can't weep yet, Katerina. You gotta wait.
Not quite there yet. But cool. So we'll see everyone next week. Thanks everybody for listening or watching.